Welcome back to the Step Through, a weekly show about the WNBA, hosted by myself, Sabreena Merchant, and Evin Gualberto. We've had a couple weeks off. I discovered that Evin has a social life, so that was good times. Evin, it's so nice to be talking about the league again, though. How are you doing?
I am good. Been a while. I don't want to say social life really, because it makes it seem like a lot has happened. Yeah. But camp week this week, we are recording, I think, all of the camp games that were supposed to have happened this week. We're recording this on the 22nd, have happened. Is that right?
I think that's correct. Okay. We should have recorded yesterday because I was on a freaking high after camp day at Sparks at crypto.com. I mean, I just love camp day. They're so much fun. Like the energy of the kids and the DJs change things up, with all the kids in the house. And it's really fun trying to hear like the non-explicit versions of the songs come through that they usually have on their playlists. But yeah, camp day is awesome. It just makes me so happy when the arena is full with like just loudly screaming people, even if I do have to wear my noise canceling headphones, because otherwise it's tricky.
Casual flex out there for she's got some noise canceling pods. Yeah. How have you liked the games themselves?
I mean, so okay, I'm gonna start here. I have a friend who's a big NBA guy who has never been able to latch on to the WNBA, just hasn't quite, I don't know, found his lane there. And he asked me recently like how he can get into the league. And every time he's tried to watch before, he says he just like hasn't figured out why the basketball is as good. And to be fair, like he's in LA, and to go channel switching from the NBA playoffs to the Sparks pre-coaching change, like I can understand why that's difficult to log on to. So I told him like, you got to get to a game in person. It just has to happen. And for a variety of reasons, he ends up showing up at Sparks Fever on Tuesday. And I was just like, this is not going to help my cause at all. Like, I think I'm a pretty good ambassador for the WNBA. I love the product. I don't think I like overhype it beyond any means. Like, we're obviously very critical of things that are happening in games. But I just knew that was not going to be the night to get somebody to want to watch the Sparks again. God bless him. He left after the first quarter and decided to show up again camp day for Sparks Dream. And there was this basket that Nneka made. I want to say in the second quarter, it was like this little step back. And that, like, I looked over at him when that happened, and he sort of had this nod on his face. I was like, okay, we're making some progress here. Like, this is a turning point right now. So suffice to say, like, I'm having a great time watching the games. There are some obviously that I would rather not turn into, but I think the playoff race has been a lot of fun because you've got these three teams, Dallas, Phoenix, and LA, that have all already traded away their 2023 first round picks and desperately need to make the playoffs. But then you've got New York, who like probably wants to make the playoffs because they invested a lot of money in free agency in their team, and Minnesota, who does not want to let Sylvia Fowles sit out, without making it to the postseason. And then Atlanta, who just can't help themselves by making the playoffs. Like, I honestly think their future would be much better suited if they didn't make the playoffs and just added a Haley Jones or Leah Boston to this already excellent core that they've got going. But I'm having a really good time watching that group of teams, work things out against each other, because I have a feeling that we're going to be spending plenty of time talking about the other five later.
That's fair. It's a shame. He could have seen like back-to-back Nneka barn burner games, not necessarily against the best defense.
Sure.
But I mean, Nneka's always fun to watch, right?
She is always fun to watch. That was like my main selling point before Tuesday's game. I was like, I can't really vouch for a lot of what's happening on Indiana, but number 30 on the Sparks, pay attention. And lo and behold, she puts up 35 points against a lot of not so well-equipped rookie defenders on the Indiana Fever. Emily Angsler was just having a go of it. It was a real rough night for her. Not that Queen or Alyssa did any better, really. But then, so Nneka puts up 35 points in that game, right? 3 off her career high of 38, but just like super effective, doing all of the classic Nneka post footwork things, just super decisive movements to the basket. I mean, what can we see about Nneka that hasn't already been said? But I honestly think the game against Atlanta was like even more impressive. She shoots 9 for 11 against the Dream. Basically, first possession of the game, just does exactly to Naz Hillman what she's been doing to every other rookie who's been coming her way. Felt pretty bad for Naz that like she's been starting in the absence of Mo Billings, and her reward is, hey, like A'ja Wilson one night, now it's Nneka Ogwumike. Hey, one of those went pretty well, actually. So.
Yeah, and just a bunch of spins. The last 2 games, Nneka, like, I mean, you've already talked about the footwork, but the post seals, the duck-ins, the actions they run, not necessarily overly complicated, because I do feel that like previous, if you had turned into the Derek Fisher cylinder immediately, it looked like they were overcomplicating things, but there's been a simplification. And I mean, when you have Nneka Ogwumike, like, I mean, if you want to argue like MVP ballot, stuff like that, she's on there.
I think so.
Yeah.
With my entirely biased opinion.
Yeah.
No, I also think it's been interesting to watch her play more with Chiney recently. Liz was in the health and safety protocols and then came off the bench for this last game because she's still getting back into conditioning. And so that means Nneka and Chiney start together and play most of their minutes together. And like, I think Nneka and Liz have found a perfectly fine dynamic. Like the high-low thing works out pretty well, but Chiney just has, which is a wild thing to say considering how she came into the league and what she was even 3 years ago. She has just more perimeter skills and like just more activity outside that just makes her a more interesting front court partner with Nneka. She can actually space the floor now, which is, again, just crazy things to say about Nneka Ogwumike considering the player that she was. A successful player, mind you. So I like that dynamic quite a bit. I'm interested to see if Fred leans into that more because I mean, Liz said she liked coming off the bench. I don't think that's a thing that's going to continue. It's probably just something that you say because you're trying to be a good teammate. But hey, if Liz wants to come off the bench, I really enjoy the sisters playing together. I think it just gives the Sparks a higher activity level and just really engages that super aggressive, switchy defense that, you know, Coach Trammell has brought to LA since 2019.
So the sisters playing together sparks joy?
That it does.
All right. Just had to get that one in there. Anyone else catch your eye?
Yeah. So, I mean, camp day, just the best time of the year. But Tiffany Hayes, goodness gracious, since she came back, it is hilarious watching opposing defenses trying to keep her out of the paint because they just can't. Like, she's got this little herky-jerky rhythm that she can use to get in there. She just completely bullies you and just overwhelms you physically to get into the paint, whether it's in transition, in the half court, off of offensive rebounds. I mean, she's so physical. She's got really good touch and like craft around the rim. Her jumper is hilarious to me because like she's got sort of that like that shot put thing where like her release is a little bit lower than I'd want it to be, but pretty good since she came back. You know, 47% of her threes in the 8 games for Atlanta this year. And God, she is just so much swag all the time. Like she scores, she gets the and one, and then she flexes a little. And I mean, we talked about her a couple weeks back with that game of the week against Seattle, just like the track backs and all of the energy that she's bringing to the game. I really hope, you know, crossing my fingers that she didn't get hurt against the Sparks because like there was a nasty little play at the end where she and Lexi Brown both went down. But yeah, God, she is just awesome. And to think that like she's on the other side of 30 is still making all of this rim pressure happen is really, really impressive.
Yeah, she's absurd. There were a couple of tweets that came out. I think our friend Steven of the Double Down podcast, link below. And I think James K, they both, I guess James tweeted it and then he linked to Steven's tweet that he had found after saying, you know, they both wish that Tiffany was a few years younger, that the Ryan Howard Tiffany Hayes pairing is something they'd like to see for years to come. But based on how
she's got
dynamic,
like youth anyway,
forceful, yeah, she's been, it's crazy. And it's just to watch teams try to defend Tiffany Hayes is hilarious to me because she wants to drive, she wants to get left, and then she wants to go to her left to finish. But there's literally nothing you can do. You can't stop it. She'll like stop and go as much as she needs to get to where she needs to go. And then even if she's on the right side, she'll lean her body one way so she could get a floater with her left hand. It's mesmerizing stuff. And she's got every finish in the bag. She doesn't need to finish left. At times, it feels like she makes it more challenging for herself by trying to finish left when the righty scoop is right there. But yeah, she's amazing.
I was going through her made field goals on WNBA.com, and just every other one is driving layup, driving layup, driving layup. There's not a lot of variety to it, but it's just very effective, gets the job done. And like I said before, I think the Dream would be much better suited if they just tried to, lose a couple games, get into the lottery, add another piece here. Because like you've got Ryan, you've got Ari, I think Naz is going to be good. Like that's 3 young players who I would love to build around. Just if you could add somebody else to that core with a little more like offensive dynamism, it'd be pretty awesome. But I don't think it's going to happen unless Tiff is actually hurt, in which case like that team changes dramatically. Like Tanisha Wright was talking about this, how Hayes is just the best 2-way player on their team right now. I thought about it a little bit because it seemed like a wild statement, but it's not. Like it's pretty clear like that's what Tiffany Hayes is. But yeah, they're fun. They're really fun. I made some remarks about how the Dream are probably not better than an expansion roster this year, and that was incorrect. It's a good team.
Yeah, and she's it could be argued because the ball ends up in Ryan's hands more often than not, and when Ari has a chance to get downhill, and of course like Erica Wheeler has a bunch of late game baskets and stuff like that, but it feels very much to me like Tiffany Hayes is their closer, or at the very least she's the one you want with the ball in her hands going to work, because it feels more like a sure thing than anything else right now. It's like she's going to figure out a way to get to where she wants to go, and she wants to go left.
Yeah, she wants to go left. That is absolutely correct. Just real quick, speaking of defenses that could not keep Tiffany Hayes out of the lane, the Aces had some real trouble with Atlanta earlier this week. And it's, you can kind of tell with the Aces immediately what kind of game it's going to be for them. Like if they don't have it defensively, it shows up right away. And sometimes the score kind of masks that because they can get really hot and, put up a lot of points themselves. But I've found watching Vegas that like if they're giving up the rim, penetration and just like lack of attention and transition defense, that always happens in the first quarter and it just like never stops. It's there the entire game. And I'm like mildly concerned about the Aces because on the one hand, like they have so much talent and when they're on, they look incredible. But they've had enough of these games where they just haven't been dialed in. And like, there's just no one coming off the bench to change the tone,
Yeah. I mean, to your point, against the Dream, it was like 34 to 20 something points in the paint, fast break points. The margin was huge. And it's just, those are the things that, when teams can do that to you, there's not a whole lot you can do differently, to your point, because there's no change of pace. You have to rock with your starters. You have to rock with your big 5, and
it's pretty cool to have a big 5.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, there is no. It's not as if taking Plum out, and then inserting somebody else in, and then slowly like cycling Jackie and Chelsea and then Asia out, and then you bring them back in. Maybe there's an injection here and there, and maybe it looks different in the playoffs where you want to be playing your 5 players and you're conditioning them to be able to go. But yeah, this is similar but different to the conversation we were having last year of like, what do the Aces, can you play your 5 best players for the Aces together, please? We were begging. Yeah. And now it's just like, okay, what does it look like when you're not playing your 5 best players?
Yeah. And they've invested a lot in their 5 best players. I mean, we just saw Kelsey Plum get a contract extension this week that locks her up through next year too. And so their entire starting 5 is coming back next year, which is really good for continuity. And I'm sure that they're going to be better as a unit next year. But that also means that off the bench, we only have Raquana Williams and Rupert, and they gave away all of their draft picks to Minnesota already. So how are they adding more talent? I mean, like we're going to talk about this in our game of the week, like the types of players they bring off, those 2 teams bring off the bench to, change the pace. But like even a team like Atlanta, you can bring in like a Christy Wallace for a little bit of defensive verve, or like Ari McDonald to just like push the pace a little, or like the Sparks bringing Lexi Brown off the bench adds a little bit of like verve in that backcourt. Just like the obvious example of Bree Jones to settle the Connecticut Sun when things are not going well, right? Like other teams, they just have, I don't know, things that can change things up a little. And I just don't see that with Vegas. It's just if things are not going well, those 5 just have to get better. And like, I trust them most of the time to do it. Just, it's a lot riding on 5.
It's true. So no, never mind. I was just gonna ask Raquana Williams, per Em Adler, the best Aces defender there is around.
Correct.
No, but I mean, I agree with you. When there's nothing there, and it's not even as if you can say, well, if you just bring one of these players off the bench so there's an injection more, that's not the answer to. Yeah, that's not the answer either. I don't think. But yeah, I mean,
maybe we're just like too in the weeds here, and the Aces are fine, and like they're just gonna have bad games once in a while. But like if the Aces versus Atlanta is a playoff matchup, and Tanisha Wright, a former assistant on the Las Vegas staff, is game planning against this Aces team, I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta took a game in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I mean, I think some major analysis. This is what I get for about a decade's worth of coaching. When it looks good, it looks good, and when it looks bad, it doesn't look good. You're welcome. Yeah, you're probably right. It is just that, because until we get into the playoffs and rotations shorten anyway, and all you have to do is you have the rest. You get to game plan. You get to attack a team the way you want to attack the team. You get to, as I've said, talking about the Aces a bunch, dictate what you are willing to give up. And, if a team's going to hit these shots, then you lose. But more often than not, the Aces don't lose. So,
right.
Yep.
And when they do, it's just confounding, and we can't figure it out for a year after the fact. It is what it is. Is there anything else you wanted to hit, Evin, before our game of the week?
No, just, I mean, why not talk about it? The, DePaul University, if there was ever a time to drop the Allie Quigley throwback jersey, it was 2 weeks ago. But if I missed it,
is that the one that Candace was wearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If I missed it and the link is out there, somebody please send it to me. Yeah, the @ is right here. Thank you. No, but that's it. Just that. Our game of the week is actually
featuring Allie Quigley.
Yeah. So that works out nicely.
Oh man, DePaul throwback unis. All right, I'm gonna have to do some digging here. But yeah, our game of the week, a camp day game. We love camp day games. Was Chicago hosting Seattle on Wednesday, and Chicago was without Courtney Vandersloot, who unfortunately suffered a concussion, has missed the last 3 games. But Seattle had its full roster available, so a good opportunity for Seattle to assert itself against what I think everybody considers like the favorite in the W right now. It's interesting how that changed. Like, remember when James Wade earlier this season was like, the Aces, they're the best team. Mark that down. Like, we're going to be talking about this later. And now everyone's like, it's Chicago and then everybody else. But I digress. This was a really, really fun game. And like, just surprised me in so many different ways, because without Sloot, I thought it was going to go one way, and the first 5 minutes suggested that it was going to go one way, and then Chicago completely reverses things. And once you think that they're fully in control, then Seattle whips some things out. It had my least favorite thing about Seattle when they play their all bench lineups, which I guess was not all bench. I think Ezi was part of it, but just all of the things that frustrate me most about the Storm came to fore. Some of the things that like make Chicago just better and better than last year's team were like readily present. I don't particularly know where to start here, because Chicago won, I don't think it's fair to start with, Julia Allemand was having difficulty running the offense for 5 minutes. Like, that doesn't seem fair. But you know what? I'm going to start with Rebekah Gardner, who kind of fits into our whole bench change of pace thing. I was talking to Lexi Brown last week about Rebekah Gardner, which I thought would be a little awkward because, and Lexi's like, no, I played with Rebekah in Israel 2 years ago and just have always asked her why she hasn't come to the WNBA. And just a matter of timing, right? Like, her European seasons would end too late for her to get into training camp, yada, 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 all that. And it ended up working out just fine because the fact that Rebekah Gardner is a rookie means that she makes a lot less money on a veteran minimum than Lexi Brown does, allowing her to fit into this Chicago lineup. And Lexi was the first one to say, like, what a perfect fit that is, right? All of the spacing on Chicago with just this bully ball of Rebekah Gardner getting into the paint, getting into the post, and then that energy that she brings defensively. I mean, I don't think she's going to be my sixth woman of the year because, again, Bree Jones exists, but this is like the hallmark of the kind of player you want to bring off of the bench, who just completely gets the momentum back on your side. And her energy, her activity, it has got to be so freaking annoying to play against if you're the other team, right? She's pressing up 94 feet, right? She's a menace on the offensive glass. She's moving all the time on offense. Her cutting just never stops. And when you have Candace Parker and Emma Meesseman who can find cutters everywhere on the court, that's a problem. I don't think I really understood just how much value she was bringing to the Sky until I saw her in person. And then it just popped. Like, I have not been able to keep my eyes off of her since because she is such a good fit here. Like, the minutes that she plays instead of Kahleah Copper, I don't feel like Chicago is hurting because of that. And that is a wild thing to say for an all-star, the reigning finals MVP, just someone who has the burst that Kahleah Copper does. But hey, Rebekah Gardner, do your thing, girl. Cause like, wow, she is so important to this Sky team.
Yeah. Relentless. That's a thing, right? Relentless Rebekah.
Relentless. Yeah, totally.
Whatever.
We're going to call her Relentless Rebekah from now.
I mean, the alliteration is nice because,
yeah, sure.
Two R's in the last name as well.
If we could combine those into like one word, I think we should work on that. But obviously creating nicknames is not really our strong suit because we're still waiting on the Sylvia Fowles mortician thing that I've never told
one day. Post-retirement, it's gonna be the greatest. The entire Sky defense. I admit I get caught up with the James Wade impossibly beautiful scripted offense.
So good.
And when you have Candace and Meesse, just your high post passing, low post passing, whatever. You have Sloot and Quigley just like being perfect screen setters, not even just for guards, just perfect screen setters. And then Azare Stevens, like, what more can be said about Azare? And then, of course, reigning finals MVP, and then, Rebekah Gardner. One quick thing here is that Julie Allemand, some struggles offensively, but defensively, she brought it from the get-go, picking up Sue Bird 94 feet, and the Storm needed, maybe if this were a playoff game, Sue would have fought to enter the ball so she could bring the ball down. But a lot of the time, the Storm were bringing the ball down the court with a Jewell Loyd or Breanna Stewart, or sometimes even Ezi or Tina Charles or whoever. And that just like that little bit, which, it might not seem like a lot, takes you out of your offense for like 2-3 seconds. And as ravenous as the Sky defense is, those 2-3 seconds, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And that's going to be, and that's the thing. It's your point of attack defense is unrelenting. Allie never stops moving. You talked about Rebekah Gardner, Julie Allemand, Dana Evans. They have the energy to attack you, and they're always attacking you. And you have the rare thing where your bigs are active, especially when it comes to like ball screen and point of attack defense. So there's no peace. And I think in a game without the likes of a Breanna Stewart, this game could have gotten really bad. And I was texting you about this, when I was rewatching the game, is Tina Charles had a very, very much improved second half, but her first half was it
was rough. It was rough.
Really rough.
Especially like putting her up against Azare Stevens was just mean because Azare looked incredible. And Tina Charles decided that the best way for her to attack the Sky defense was one-on-one post-ups against Candace Parker and Azare Stevens, which I'm here to tell you, that hardly works when you're Breanna Stewart. Like, we got to get some movement going against the Chicago Sky defense. But I think what you said about being taking you away from your piece is so important because you could just feel that Seattle was just a little rushed all the time. Like I saw it most clearly with Jewell Loyd, where she was just taking quicker shots than I would want her to. Like Jewell Loyd, obviously very good at taking difficult shots. That's not the point. It's just when you're in transition and you feel like the best opportunity for you is to just immediately take this fadeaway like over a Dana Evans who's right in front of you instead of trying to work for a better shot. Like that's not just bad decision making. That's, oh, I'm not sure if I can be able to do anything better against the sky than this. And like that's how I felt Seattle was playing, was just, okay, we can get kind of a good shot. Maybe we should just take it instead of working for something better, because we don't know if that opportunity is going to come.
Yeah, and it's fun to contrast this with the first, or actually our first game of the week this season was Sky Storm, but the Storm I don't think had as difficult a time.
The Sky have definitely come into their own. Like this is a much better Sky team.
Yeah, which is crazy because, they won the championship.
They won the championship.
Yeah.
They've already won 4 more regular season games than last year. And there is
and
3 weeks left.
Yeah. And it feels like there's so much more room to grow, because like a lot of the time, and if we have time to get into like sets and stuff later, I don't normally talk about things that don't work, but from time to time it does look a little disjointed. And a big part of that is Sloot being out, and like Sloot solves so many problems and creates so many more problems for the defense because of her screening, because of her passing, because of her shooting. So, you take that piece away, and when you expect somebody to spring open off of a screen and somebody to hit you just as you're coming off and it doesn't happen, then like the flow and the timing are a little bit off. So, when Sue comes back and is able to fully integrate herself back into the squad, which I don't think will take very long.
Yeah.
It's going to pop a lot more. But this game without Sue, and, Mercedes Russell, unfortunately out for like the remainder of the season, right? So they were missing a player who has been important to.
Sure, I just mean that like if they were to play in the postseason, this is the roster that's gonna.
Yes, yeah,
there.
Yeah, but it felt when the Storm did their thing defensively, it felt as if the Sky missed a beat handling that. And normally when the Storm do their thing defensively, it feels like, oh, they're really messing up this team's offense. But there are times where Chicago just felt, oh yeah, they threw that one away. It's not necessarily that Seattle forced it. Maybe they did, but yeah, it felt like, well, both offenses I felt could have been a lot better, but I feel that the Sky made the Storm feel them a lot more. That was a really difficult thing to say.
Okay, so I do have a question about the Storm offense, not just related to this game, because they're not among the top offenses in the league this year, which is, again, if you're a regular viewer of the step through, my policy is I will stop betting against Breanna Stewart when she's healthy. Like never. Like that's not what I'm going to do. This Breanna Stewart is around. This is the team that I'm putting my money on. And yeah, it's like this is not a defense. This is not an offense that has like looked particularly pretty this year. It hasn't gelled. And I wonder if there is more upside offensively for the Storm, like enough to match up with what Chicago is bringing, because I do feel like there's more upside for Chicago, definitely, because you add in Sloot and all of a sudden, like, hey, those 3 passes that Julia Allemand and Emma Meesseman made to each other that just didn't connect, like those are probably not going to happen. But I'm curious, like, where is that upside coming from for Seattle? Is it just Tina Charles running some pick and roll instead of posting up? Like, where do you see that coming?
Well, I think the simplest solution is one that, Noah Quinn may or may not. It's the bench lineups. It is basically what it is. Like, we were talking about this with the Aces. It's like you play your best 5. I don't quite know. I mean, I have an idea of what the best 5 looks like on paper for the Storm, but like when you're not playing that best 5, like, what does it look like? Maybe it's taking away. I'm not going to throw any Storm players under the bus because, like, Lord knows we do that enough when you talk about the Storm bench units. But like maybe it's just giving the ball handling reps to Jewell Loyd in those, like, staggering units, those. Yeah. So I think Ezi and Jewell have a lot of chemistry. So if you're going to stagger them, it's going to be like Sue and Stewie and then Jewell and Ezi. And then you work in Tina Charles here and there where you need the offense. But it's just like that feels like the simplest fix for me. And keep an all-star out there at all times feels like a simple solution. But I think that's where it comes from.
It?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like this game was tied at the end of the first quarter, and then it was 28-21 by the time the bench unit was done, in the second quarter. And like that's the margin of the game right there. So I think that's a pretty fair fix. I thought you were going to say Noelle Quinn just like needs to dress up more often on the sideline.
Listen, we heard
I
from
really thought that's where we were going.
we heard from friend of the pod, Em Adler, that Noelle doesn't she wears
Pack fits
the
for away games.
yeah. It's a real disappointment for the away fans, quite honestly.
Just for the viewers of the game in general, it's a real disappointment.
I agree. So one thing I would like to hit on real quick is the Jewell Loyd passing. So with the clock winding down at the end of the first quarter, Jewell Loyd has Rebekah Gardner on her. Quick give and go with Tina Charles. And then Allie helps off because Tina's popping and they switch it. And then Steph Talbot is cutting from the corner to the basket. And it looks like Jewell misses her because the opportunity presents itself. She doesn't throw it. And then it looks like it's gone. And then Jewell just whips a pass in there to Steph Talbot.
So pretty.
Yeah. And then the other one is actually one where they waved it off because there was a foul called prior. But it was in the second quarter where Allie is on Jewell and then Meesse is on Stewie. They set a pick and roll and they call a foul, I think, on Allie grabbing Stewie on the screen. But she's able to get the pass through Meesse and Allie's hands right into Stewie, and Stewie makes a floater, which obviously they wave off. But the passing this game, not just from Jewell, from everybody. Just
Stewie had a couple waved off buckets that were just real pretty.
yeah.
I mean, you mentioned this earlier, like this game could have been real out of hand if Breanna Stewart was not on Seattle. And God, Stewie just had some moments. Like, oof. Okay, so we mentioned the Double Down podcast earlier, and they ranked their top 10 players in the league, and Stewie was number one on both their lists. And I think it's no surprise that she's number one on my list and probably number one on Evan's list as well. I've been thinking a lot about whether she's the MVP or not, because there is a strong WNBA bias towards picking the best player on the best team. And Lord knows the Seattle Storm are not going to have the best record in the WNBA at the end of the season. But that does not mean that it's just not remarkable to watch Stewie work, because the things that she does, like while she's being guarded by Meesseman and Candace Parker, which that's not a fun way to start the day for anyone, especially like at 9 a.m. Pacific time, even if you're Breanna Stewart. But like some of the takes that she had at Emma Meesseman, she had this one pass to Jewell where Emma was just like crowding her as much as possible. And Stewie, like, it's very similar to actually the whip I think that Jewell had to Steph, but just like right down the center of the paint. God, there was a couple of screening actions that Stewie was part of because she's just always working. Like there was one where she tries to throw an entry pass into Ezi and it doesn't work. And so like the play looks like it's about blown up. But then she sets a screen for Sue Bird, slips, there's a switch, and she just has this like beautiful little post footwork in the middle to just finish over this small little guard who's subject to guarding Breanna Stewart. A couple attacks at Candace Parker in the fourth quarter, like when they needed those points to keep the game from getting out of hand. Like, and then actually having to do work defending Candace Parker it's a lot. There's a lot going on for Breanna Stewart, and she's really, really good. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, God, it's so much fun to watch her play.
Pass of the season, I think there have been some big time candidates, but Stewie was crowded. Meesse, she's got arms, like she's got length, she's major
long,
length, and just the angle with which like she throws it. I think the biggest thing wasn't necessarily to get it by Allie, it was to get it underneath Tina Charles's hands, who was sitting like at the elbow, at the nail, whatever. Right. I don't know how it got through. And the most annoying thing in the world to me is that there was no replay. Like that's
of all of the complaints that I have about WNBA broadcasts, and Lord knows there are a few, the lack of consistent replay is annoying, because you watch an NBA or a college game, and if there's a good play, they're showing it like 7 other times. I mean, Fran Belibi dunks in the NCAA tournament, and I saw that play 13 more times before anything else happened in that game, as it should be. So when there are good things that happen, like you're going to commercial, at least show me something. Like I don't need to zoom in on the bench because I'm not hearing what James Wade is saying anyway. Yeah, more replays would be nice.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
speaking of passes, just while we're on the subject, Candace Parker.
Oh my God.
I mean, we can talk more about Candace later, but I don't think people realize she is leading the break and she finds Kahleah Copper with a lefty dot. The ball never touches her right hand.
It's so good.
Never touches her right hand. Thankfully, because the Sky are a home team, we got a pair of replays.
I wanted 7 more angles of it.
Yeah.
How does she lose Gabby Williams? The little look off.
Yeah, there's at least one other time this season where she's done that, and it was all left hand. The fact that it never even touches her right hand is insane. If you have never tried doing that with your offhand, try it. Just
Best
try
of
it.
luck.
Yeah, there was also another one where Meesse. I don't even know how to explain what happened. It was Julie cutting backdoor this time, and Meesse is able to throw it in there. I think gets it past Sue. It was a really tight angle, but it's right on the money, and she gets it through. And then just one more Meesse one where she drives. It doesn't really matter what the action was, but she basically ends up rolling, and then Tina Charles, Jewell Loyd, and Steph Talbot all converge. And
she gets back out to Allie, right?
Yeah, she kicks her right out, and it's just... The Sky team is unfair.
It's unfair. Okay, so they win a title with a really good roster, right? A roster that we thought underachieved by finishing 16-16. And what do? They bring in Rebekah Gardner as this backup wing that they really didn't have. Or I guess Diamond was that wing, but like Rebekah just fills the holes that they had a little bit better than Diamond was doing. And then they upgrade Stephanie Dolson to Emma Meesseman, which is superbly unfair because of all of the things that Meesse can do. I mean, Lord knows we're big fans of Steph Dolson. At least I am. I mean, we like just exalted her on that episode that we did when Liberty Sun was game of the week. But the thing is that Meesse does, like the passes, and then, you know, game down to the wire, there's like a minute and change left. She's got Ezi Magbagor on her in the post, and she just fakes on one side, comes up on the other side of the basket, puts the Sky up 4. She can do everything. Like she can pass. She can make any kind of pass, I think. I mean, she's not like Candace Parker bringing the ball up the court kind of point forward, but when you put her as a hub in your half court offense, like I can see why they're sending just miles of help at her because like, Lord knows what she's going to do.
Meesse can just she can do it all. The off balance jumpers, they're absurd. The touch, the, you know, like you already said, fake one way, finish on the other. And you can run your offense through her. When you think you figured something out against the Sky, okay, somebody else can do that exact thing from this exact difference. Anyway. Yeah, very good.
So the last time I think I saw the Sky lose was a camp day game against the Lynx. I want to say they're 9-1 in their last 10. And I'm increasingly having difficulty figuring out what is going to give them trouble. What do you think could give the Sky trouble?
I mean, I don't know. I really...
No, it's unfair of me to spring this question on you.
No, but I think I just think that it's not even necessarily that like their defense, does it have a weak spot here and there? I don't necessarily think so. But when somebody doesn't have it, like we've already talked about this, your love of those, I say love facetiously, like
those bench lineups.
Those, yeah. No, I mean the Candace Parker 1 foot fadeaway.
The baseline fadeaway. Goodness. She busts one out like every game now.
She'll get one of those at least a game, right? Except for, you know, that game against the Sparks. Yeah. When Sloot doesn't have it going, when Allie doesn't have it going, like there's always somebody. And that's why I, you know, kind of circle back around to being infatuated with this beautiful James Wade scripted offense, is because even if, you know, you don't trust Rebekah Gardner or Dana Evans or Julie Allemand to run the offense as efficiently as Courtney Vandersloot, which like that's understandable.
Sure.
Their offense just keeps working and you're going to find something. And the defense shifts so much. You know, I talked about this last year where the Chicago Sky are going to make you play their way. And like you can try really hard not to get sucked into it, but if you play their way, you're going to lose. And they're too good. They're just too good for you to beat them playing. Like you can drag them into the mud. I think they only have like 6 losses. They're the only team at the time of this recording to have clinched the playoff berth. But like, I think I'm going to have to really go into those 6 losses and all of their close games to see what exactly it will take to beat them, because I don't have an answer for you right now. And even if I did all that deep diving, I don't think I would after that either. So,
well, the good news is we did a deep dive into one of their losses, but unfortunately Kahleah Copper was not there for that game. So things have changed. It's funny we've gotten this long and not mentioned that this was a matchup of the players with the 2 best first steps in the league. I do love Steph Talbot. I found myself questioning whether Seattle's best 5 in this matchup is the starters or if you replace Gabby Williams with Steph Talbot, because Gabby Williams takes some things off the table offensively. Well, to be fair, Seattle as a whole, just transition wise, made some weird choices in this game. And Gabby Williams' bad outlet passes was just, I think, a symptom of that problem. But like, I don't know, you just get into situations where Candace Parker is just so comfortable helping off of her. Like, they just leave her. And if your possessions end Gabby Williams' jumper that's a win. She just gacked like 2 layup opportunities at the end of the game where I think it could have gotten this guy within 2. Or tied the game, one or the other. And then you put Talbot in and like, she's a credible shooter, and she makes those cuts and just like seems to move a little bit better on offense. But then Gabby Williams is doing these great things where she's fronting Candace Parker in the post and making life really miserable on defense. And I know you said that like, you can't really get Chicago into the mud, but there are units for the Seattle Storm where like, at least for a few possessions, they can get Chicago into the mud. But Steph Talbot is not in those lineups. Like, you get her into the post on a switch and the Chicago bigs are all too happy to take advantage of that. So there's a little give and take that Noelle Quinn's going to have to do here to figure out how to optimize Gabby Williams better offensively. Or I don't think you can just make Steph Talbot a better defensive player that much. I think it's really going to come down to how do we make Gabby more useful, because she made some real defensive highlights in this game. I just wonder if it was worth it at the cost of like what she's not giving you on the other end.
Maybe the answer to that is more functional lineups, because don't want to keep, God, it feels like every week it's, this is the first week I will admit that like I'm going in on their bench lineups. But obviously like I agree with you on your point where it's, if you're gonna rock without Stewie or Jewell Loyd, like who, for my money, I mean, you can throw Subert in those like bench lineups, but
I'm with you. I don't think they should be playing any minutes without Stewie or Jewell on the court.
Yeah. Even if you're talking about like having Tina Charles out there, I don't necessarily think you can replicate what, Stewie and Jewell do. And the way that defenses key in on them, it's just completely different, I think, when you have neither of those players out there and, you get into trouble. And maybe that's the thing is Jewell, we've seen scale up. And so when you put the ball in Jewell's hand, maybe you force feed her a little bit and then you surround her with Gabby in those lineups. So Gabby's giving the ball up or Gabby's attacking and Jewell can attack, second side.
Just like, yeah.
But until we see that, what we're forced to have to analyze is there are points left on the table. There are things left on the table, which is like something we talked about with the Sky last year because, they were never fully healthy.
Right.
Yeah. So we're just waiting on that for the Storm, I guess.
But like they are fully healthy other than, the obvious exception of Mercedes Russell, who I think would help quite a bit, honestly. But yeah, I miss her. She's a nice little passer in the post too. Those are fun times. But yeah, that's most of what I had to say about this game. We mentioned the Chicago transition defense. I thought they were pretty good. Julia Allemand had a nice stop in transition once. They're doing a better job of not turning the ball over. And even then, when they do turn the ball over, Seattle only had 6 points off turnovers in this game. I remember last year when we talked about Seattle, so much of our conversations were, look how freaking awesome this team is in transition. Like the way they finish in transition. And to only get 6 points off of turnovers feels like malpractice. So credit to the Chicago defense for figuring out how to get back. Like they just generally made things very difficult for Seattle when they tried to push the pace.
Yeah, I think their last great game in transition was against the Sun in that Commissioner's Cup game. And, after seeing those nightmare mannequins, like nothing was ever the same.
Please do not clip to the nightmare.
No. I not even if I really wanted to, would I ever subject anybody to that. You talked about Breanna Stewart, and mostly in terms of offense, but like defensively, Kahleah Copper, the reigning Finals MVP, is able to either finish at the basket or draw contact by contorting her body, and it goes to the free throw line, or like as we saw a lot during the postseason run, both like those and ones. There was one play in particular where she beat somebody off the dribble. I can't remember who, but went up and under, like started on one side and tried to finish on the other side. But Stewie, with her go-go gadget arms, right, is able to like contest on both sides of the rim and is able to force a miss, which, doesn't happen very often with Kahleah Copper. So
her arms, like her wingspan is incredible. What's she, like 7'1" wingspan and 6'4"? It's crazy. Did you did you see that tweet of that granny playing basketball who just like bursts into the bucket and Allie Quigley's like, Kahleah is going to be doing this when she's in a nursing home?
Yep. I mean, the guy tried to call a walk on her, right? Embarrassing stuff. Truly embarrassing stuff for that guy. Yeah. Oh, I have one for you. It was just a question. I'm not necessarily looking for an answer, just like want to get your reaction on it. Who's a more fun defensive pairing, Jewell and Stewie or Candace and Kahleah Copper?
I think Candace is the most fun of the four, but that's a good question. I think it's Candace and Ka, because like Ka she fights through these screens too, and Candace can do everything, and she's also dictating everything. I think it'd be those two.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were gonna say, because I have this one clip where it's Jewell and Tina are trying to run a give and go, and then once Jewell gives it up, Ka just will not let her get the ball back, and so Tina just, all right, I'm gonna drive this, and then Candace Parker just like
nope,
blocks her, or maybe it was, I can't remember, maybe it was Ezi, but either way, like Candace was never gonna let anything happen, and like I already talked about this, like the disaster that was Tina Charles' first half.
On both ends, like the help was just all over the place when Chicago was driving with her on the court.
Yeah, and
that has to get better.
I think it will.
I hope so.
Well, it couldn't have gotten worse. So
no, it could not have gotten worse than that first half. I will agree.
It's rough because the two games we've talked about Tina Charles as a member of the Storm have been she scored the one made field goal against the Dream, and now this. Right.
I swear we're not picking on her. It just sort of happened.
No, we're not gonna do a game of the week where she goes off against the Indiana Fever. Like I just don't.
No, I'm not watching more Fever games. I apologize. I'm not doing it. Kurtis had such a great tweet this week where he's like, the great thing about watching the Fever is I get to see so many opponents have these like memorable performances.
Yeah. Watch the other players really shine.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Shout out Kurtis. Hello, Kurtis. Before we get out of here, just want to break down a couple of sets, because like I realize now that I have said both times prior that we've had Storm game of the weeks that I'll get to Storm set breakdown whenever, like in the future, but I never got to it. So just want to give, Noel Quinn has had a bunch of great ATOs. And if you want a deep dive into that, I will link to Something Everything by Em Adler, just incredible breakdowns. But one thing I did want to break down was a play I saw against the Dream 2, but I'll talk about this one against the Sky, where somebody sets a ram screen for Breanna Stewart, and then Stewie then ghosts the screen instead of setting the screen, and then attacks off the dribble just, because she can. Nobody else in the world, I don't want to say nobody else in the world, but like it's a very difficult to attack off the dribble like this, especially with a quite uncharacteristic Subert threw the pass off the mark a little bit, and then Stewie attacks, misses the initial layup, and then gets the putback. And then she did this against the Dream as well, where she took looked like an off-balance three, but I don't think you can run that set with very many other players, expecting somebody to set the screen and viably be a threat to set the screen or ghost the screen and then pop for three. Yeah, a little bit of zone from the Storm, like not a set breakdown, but just want to talk about that a little bit. I know you're not going to be able to employ it as much against a team like the Sky when, just about everybody can shoot, but maybe that's the answer, a bit of a change up
to muck things up at least.
Yeah, you'll be able to keep Steph Talbot, who's not necessarily a bad defender, but not a Gabby Williams level defender.
Right.
But yeah, the rest of these are all, I don't want to gush about the Chicago Sky offense, but it is really nice.
Since when do we not want to gush about the Chicago Sky offense?
Well, if I'm going to tee myself up and you're going to encourage me, then all right, there's this one that I lost my mind over, where Meesse sets this slice screen for Allie, and then Meesse and then Azrae set a double stagger for Julie. Azrae sets a ball screen, Allie sets a back screen, and then Julie Allemand, who, if we're going to say she's struggled offensively, sliced through the Storm defense like nobody was there. And it was the lineup where they had Breanna January on her, and Breanna Stewart was out there, and Jewell Loyd was also out there, and she just gets a layup like nobody knows anything that's happening. And then, if we're going to talk about James Wade, just shout out to Nekias Duncan. He tweeted about this already, but very rarely do we get to see the coach draw up a play and then they go out and execute exactly what happens. And, eventually it gets waved off. But near the end of the first half, James Wade draws up an elevator and you can very clearly see it drawn out. You can't hear him in the huddle, but you see the whiteboard, and he draws up an elevator, and then Allie goes off of these two screens, and then Julie gets entered the ball. Allie pops out. Tina Charles is able to harass Allie enough, and then Breanna Stewart comes over to help. She's not able to get the shot off before the buzzer goes off, but James Wade and his elevators, big fan.
I feel like the only times when I see a play drawn out and then it gets executed are James Wade and the Chicago Sky. I always think of that time in the bubble when they're playing the Aces and that 3-point basket to get for Quigley to get the win. Yeah, he's good. He's a cool dude.
Yeah. Oh, just one more thing. We haven't talked about Sue Bird at all. Because Lord knows she gets covered enough. But
sure.
In this game, there were a bunch of times where she hit these insane leaners. And I was just I don't know how it's happening. I don't know.
She was very aggressive trying to get to that pull-up too.
And it was one where she attacks, I can't remember who it was, but she has two hands in her face at the elbow. And then another time where Stewie has the ball in an isolation situation and Candace pokes the ball upward and Sue ends up with the ball and she attacks and she shoots a pull-up, another leaner over Candace at the elbow. But Candace is right there. And normally when Candace is right there, she gets it. Not this time, which is, insane to me. So just going to leave it with some Sue Bird leaners. Just,
Last Sue Bird Diana Taurasi game, probably forever today.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I guess that's
a thing. That's a thing that's happening. But yeah, they definitely did a good job of limiting Sue Bird's influence. You mentioned this earlier with Julie Allmand's defense and the fact that she had to go into these awkward jump shots when she hasn't been a particularly effective 2-point shooter this year just indicates how uncomfortable she was being made. But even then, all the Storm starters were positive plus minus. So how did they lose?
I guess we'll never know.
All right,
anyway.
Evin, what are you looking forward to for next week?
Are there more camp games?
I don't know. I should check the schedule. But I do love camp games. Just starting my day off with some great basketball. Nothing like it. We do have a Commissioner's Cup game next week. Oh God, we have no, that's not a camp game. That's just Sunday. I was gonna say there's a noon game of Dallas versus Indiana, but that's just a Sunday game.
Sure. When else can you have it?
God forbid.
Yeah.
No, we appear to be past the camp game phase. The only day games I can find in the near future are all weekend games. That's disappointing.
I guess it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, I mean, Fred Williams said that he'd love to have a camp game every month. I think the Sparks who attended the ESPYs and then played a camp game on Thursday probably didn't care for it as much, but I assumed the scheduling would be better most of the time.
Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but I am looking forward to the Commissioner's Cup because Sky Aces is always a really good matchup. Again, always interested to see if teams can make things difficult for the Sky, and the Aces were capable of doing that for about 15 minutes the last time they played. So if they can do it for longer, should be pretty fun.
Yeah, that's all I got. I don't oh, actually, I am looking forward to something locally speaking. The Storm are coming to town. They're going to be playing a back-to-back. What's strange to me is that ESPN has decided that they are going to televise the first game of the back-to-back is going to be on ESPN, and the second game, which is Breanna January and Sue Bird's final game in Washington, regular season anyway, is not going to be on ESPN.
They don't have any local ties, do they?
No, but okay. I've seen it done everywhere else.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Oh, just Breanna January's final game. Arizona. Speaking of Arizona ties, yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that is absolutely a big deal.
Fingers crossed that gets acknowledged at some point.
Oh, it has to be. She was a former member of the Mercury.
I know. That's why. But yeah.
In the PR emails that I have gotten from Phoenix Mercury for this game, they have all mentioned Breanna January's last game. So it is a thing. Hopefully it gets recognized. But yeah, Breanna January is cool. Less so when she's playing next to Tiffany Prince in the backcourt.
Brutal. We're ready to get out of here. Brutal. Understandable, but brutal. The last thing I'll leave you of is this clip I already tweeted out of Breanna Stewart and Candace Parker just talking right after they come out of halftime. And they're just, if there are any lip readers out there, let me know what was said. You can clearly see Stewie respond like, oh my God. And, they're talking to each other. It's just an outstanding moment. So
it's two goats.
Yeah, we'll leave you with that. Bye.